Hello and welcome to the 6 Plus show, a podcast for your wargaming and 40k needs. Hobby talk, tactics, tournament reports, lore and much more. We have it all. Please welcome your host for the evening, Tom.
Okay, welcome ladies, gentlemen and Talos with Core to that 6 Plus show. I'm your host, Tom. It is a state of play tonight. It's an end of edition state of play, so we're going to have some fun with it. And I am joined tonight by the Realspace Raiders. How are you doing, boys?
Hello.
Bonjour.
A friendly Drukhari wave. It is, of course, Paulie and George, the nefarious Archons, who you might recognise from your podcast listenings.
I feel like if it was a friendly Drukhari wave, it would be like one hand waving and the other hand with a knife behind the back.
Yeah,
just
very
like,
much so. Yeah. Yeah, it's Bronn in Game of Thrones always does the thing with the knife behind the back. He's a very Drukhari kind of fighter, I think. Bronn, he'd have been good in the fighting pits. Excellent. Okay, so yeah, I was going to say we're going to talk about my favourite army in the game, your favourite army in the game, the Dark Kin of Khemora tonight. They've had a ride, this book, let's face it. This has been, I think, one of the defining stories of this edition, Drukhari and the highs and lows. But they're settling down at the end of the edition, and obviously you guys are still very much flying the flag and taking names with them, so it'll be really interesting to hear about what you've been doing in Arcs of Omen. But that's not where we're going to start. We're going to start with some origin stories. And before we get the ins and outs of your origin story, it's not every day that you get to thank people that you meet in the content world, but I have a big thank you to both of you guys, because I have a very distinct memory that I wanted to share with you, which is being trapped in my little flat mid-pandemic, sweet nothing to do. One of the things you could do back then was walk or do a run, and sometimes music, sure, but a lot of the time the thing that got me round on a walk or a run in all sorts of different weather as that sort of year went by was your podcast. It was Realspace Raiders. That was my favourite thing to have on as I went out and about and got my time outside during the middle of the pandemic and was sort of trying to clear my headspace. And I only started playing Drukhari right at the end of 8th, so I think I pretty much landed at exactly the right spot to basically learn the ins and the outs of the army from you guys, and obviously tracked it all the way through 9th edition and learned so much about how to play the army and where it was at during 9th edition as well. So a big thank you to you guys, and of course to Dom as well, who's not here with us tonight, for that.
You're welcome, mate. That's really nice to hear, Tom. Like, it's we just did it for a laugh, really, more than anything.
Yeah.
It helped us, I think, get through the
massively, absolutely huge.
Yeah,
it started off as a bit of a Drukhari think tank where obviously I always talk Drukhari to lots of people, and there was George, Dom, and obviously Joe Coles of Liam Dempsey fame at the moment, right?
Yeah.
And these are the people that I was speaking to the most, and I was like, eventually, I just put in a group chat. I was like, look, I'm being lazy. Let's just all talk together and talk about Drukhari, obviously at the end of 8th edition. And then obviously Dom is in the VFX world, knows how to edit, said I want to do a podcast. I was like, I'd like to do a podcast. And then we all said, let's do a podcast. Joe had experience with Dan Cook's one, with Look Out Sir, 40k, and then we got on it from there, and it was massive, especially over lockdown. It was like,
it really helped, because we all had such a mixed experience with it. Like I work at a hospital, so it was at the time, and so for me, it was this really weird mix of like work life was relatively normal, but then you come home and there was like all the restrictions and everything. And I know that like Dom and Paulie were like working from home a lot. And it was just like everyone was having this like really mixed experience of like what was going on during the time, and we all shared this passion of Dark Elder and 40k in general, really, but more of a focus on Dark Elder, and it really helped us just kind of like have something to talk to, network a little bit, and distract us from the rubbish that was going on at the time.
Kept us sane. Sure.
Yeah,
completely. Yeah, I think as you say, 40k in general performed that role for a lot of people, and I think part of the reason it's exploded so much in the last couple of years is it's the payoff from that, right? So many people who were hobbying and painting and talking about the game and staying sane that way, and then we were suddenly all allowed out, and we all ran out to all these events and played the hell out of the last couple of years. And I mean, Realspace Raiders has a very special place in my heart because it's that faction specialism. I think is still a relatively rare thing out there in the sort of content world. You don't have these diehard sort of dedicated sort of forms of content as much, but it was very slick as well. The music and the sort of the editing and stuff. You guys were always really polished, but also I like a long podcast. I'm not going to lie, that's my favorite. Like one where you just go and you just see what happens. Good event reports and all that stuff, like deep dives on the Coven and the Succubus. Again, I'm not exaggerating when I say it, but like you literally listen to a Coven episode, like right, okay, I'm going to go and play the shit out of Coven now. I understand what I'm doing. I've learned some stuff. So yeah, no, it's great. As I said, I think so as someone who now makes stuff, you never quite know exactly how it reaches and how it affects people. So I thought it'd be nice to just reach out and say, yeah, that podcast has been a big deal for me for many years. And as you say, in a weird time of life as well. So I'm very grateful to you both.
That's very cool. Right. I mean, we intend to continue. So and still focusing on the Dark Elder, because I mean we're going through another edition change, which is really interesting.
That's it. Yeah.
It's going to be really more to talk about.
Yeah, completely. And I think I'm really excited for it. I'm sure you guys are. There's nothing like that refresh and reset. And Drukhari are one of those armies where there's going to be something weird and fun and interesting in there. And it's just exciting to find out what that looks like and what
Claude
that will
Fiend
be.
meta, that's what we're predicting.
John was so sure that was going to happen, man.
We all were. I've literally got 15 of them.
27 Claude Fiends ready to be 3D printed.
Bad boy. He's such a bad boy.
Yeah.
I forgot you had Joe Coles as well, because Lookout says one of the first ever ones I listened to. I'm a big fan of Joe, because he's, as you say, he's with Liam Dempsey these days, isn't he? But he's a good lad. I saw he was running Flesh Terrors.
He went 5 games, didn't he?
Did really well with them as well. And again,
he's a good player.
Yeah, I was a cracking player from Flesh Terrors, one of my other loves. So that was really cool to see. I think people have types, don't they? There's always like a sort of an array of factions. Like if you like Drukhari, chances are you like some of the other sort of weird and scary factions.
You tend to like the darker side of 40k, don't you? Like
you get your Imperium types. You
don't tend to find many players that play both Drukhari and Tau, for instance.
Yeah. That's it. As I say, there's people who are drawn to the light, and then there's people who are drawn to the dark, for sure. In terms of your sort of playing origin stories with Drukhari, how far back does it go? Like when did you guys start? How did you get into Drukhari in the first place?
Oh, you take the lead on this, boss.
So Drukhari are close to my heart. My first army was, I took my hands up on it.
Nothing wrong with that.
Lizardmen. So I started as a preteen, a young child, back when 5th edition fantasy, was it 4th or 5th? I can't remember. But 2nd edition 40k was nearing its end. So Lizardmen were my first love. My first 40k mini was a Metal Necron, which you got with White Dwarf. I want to say like 218 or something like that. And then 3rd edition rocked round, and Dark Elder were my first army, and I got into them with that. Went through those, and then I guess I started playing all the different armies. It was almost a bit of like a golden age of 40k. I think 9th is like, and 10th is now like a new golden age, but in terms of the models, like seeing them get redone were phenomenal. Whereas Dark Elder is kind of weird that the Guardians and the Orc Boys came out a few months after the Dark Elder Warriors, and their sculpts were kind of poor. I think the Gary Morley ones weren't the best. The Chris Fitzpatrick ones had a bit of nicety about them, but it was a weird release. But for me as a kid, I guess they were new, and I was getting into 40k. But and it was something which I'll get onto. I guess I can talk about now why I play Drukhari, and it's just the multiple sub factions. There's just so much you can do where it's. And they're so distinct where, you have the 3 main sub-factions. You have the mercenaries, who have their own, sub-genres. You have the Corsairs now, and there's Porting and Harlequins. There's, I don't know, an army where you have so much sheer variety of play style. And for me, as a painter and converter, so many opportunities. We make up memes about, is this an Archon? Give them splinter rifles. But there's just always so much opportunity, and I think the lore is fantastic. I love lore. George is the lore master. He can tell you a story from every sort of sub-faction Cabal, but there's just that's why I came back to them. So a long-winded path for me, but they were my first 40k love.
Fantastic.
And I took the the break everyone does from the game to have an interest, and then I came back into it 2009, started converting X-Dites. And then rumours begun of Dark Elder getting a redo. And they're the only army, so I've played the same army for 13 years. So I guess I am what you would call a faction specialist.
That is indeed what you are. Yeah.
That's it. But I can't get bored with Dark Elder. I liquidated a lot of other armies, but there's just always, but I liquidated them to focus on in Dark Elder, right?
Sort them out. I like it.
There's so much you can do, and
I liquidated Dark Elder to buy more Dark Elder.
That's it. But it's we talk a lot about, me and George privately, about meta chases, and George doesn't like them as much as I tolerate them, as it were. But we're almost Dark Elder meta chasers ourselves. We chase our own meta.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Whereas, me and G, we have such big collections. We can field whatever's the meta. Like maybe the Clawfield meta. We'd have to get 27 printed up. But at the time, there's always if
it was like Razorwing or Claw or Chimera meta, we'd be right there, because I've still got loads of the buggers up there that from 5th edition when Beastar was a thing. But
no, I think that's something where, again, this is why I'm really excited for 10th, right? Because I think that early bit of an edition really rewards people that just have a massive collection of particular armies that they know inside out, because you can adapt so quickly, you can draw on things. If you've just cycled through the list of a bunch of armies, then you don't have that. And we all know that editions send you round on a chase to go and get the next set of things. But if you actually just love and have the army, it's never an issue. You can draw in and get out whatever it is you want. So I think that's a real position of strength, and I think that early meta is going to be fun, because we're going to get to see all these people who love particular armies just absolutely going hell for leather against each other and trying all these different things out in the indexes. And I'm super, super up for that, to be honest.
Yeah, me too.
And so how far does your playing history go back, George?
Similar. So I think I started playing in 3rd edition. My first army was Tyranids, and they're still an army I love very deeply.
They're great.
I love bugs. Super excited about the Leviathan box. I think those new models
so cool. Yeah, so cool.
The only one, caveat, the only one I don't like is the reskin Venom Crawler. Can't remember the name of it.
It's a bit cheeky, isn't it?
It's literally a Venom Crawler in flesh.
Yeah.
But yeah, other than that, the models are crazy. I love the homages to really old Tyranid models like the Scream Effects and the the big psychic dude, I can't remember, Tyrant, or something.
Nero Tyrant or something. Yeah, that looks amazing.
Nero Tyrant or something like that. Yeah, but they all look good. Really excited about that. But for me it was Tyranids. I was the Gene Stealer spammer. I had 80 of the things, and I used to use the chapter approved Gene Stealer in infestation rules that were just ridiculous, because Gene Stealers just wrecked everything. Then I moved on to Bealtan Eldar. I love Aspect Warriors.
Yeah. They're really cool.
I had a 3rd edition full pewter Aspect Warrior army that was my pride and joy, and I used it throughout all of 3rd and into 4th, and then took the break that everyone takes when you go to uni and you do other things. And sadly, that I'll never forgive her for, my mum somehow got rid of my 40k collection. Yeah, so I still kind of fucking mother. Anyway, and then I came back at 5th. At the start of 5th, end of 4th into 5th, and I started with Space Wolves, because they're my favourite Space Marine chapter. And I did the whole Longfang Grey Hunter spam with missile Grey Hunter, missile Longfangs. That was a fun army, but I got a bit bored of them, because Space Marines, I don't know. For me, they were very forgiving, and it just wasn't my play style. So I wanted to go for something different. And then at the time, 2010 hit, the Drukhari revamp happened, and I fell in love with the models instantly. Particularly the Reaver jet bike.
Really such a cool model.
Yeah, it really just grabbed me. And I just went full tilt into that, basically. And I've, the same as Paulie, I've been playing Drukhari exclusively pretty much ever since. And getting to meet Sky, Sky's been a big influence on me. I followed his blog. I went to the darkcity.net or darkcity.net.com or whatever it was, which is before the years of Facebook and stuff. There was a forum where all the Comorites could hang out and share their ideas and what have you. And it's all just kind of evolved from there. So just been playing them, taking them to events. Started off obviously little local ones. Didn't really touch the ITC until I want to say 2019, 2020, something like that. I didn't really. It was all just little local ones, and we went to a few Warhammer World events, me and best mate Paddy, and then that's it. And I just love everything about them. I love the models, I love the lore, I love the conversion opportunities. I love the fact that like you can put pretty much anything in a Drukhari army and make it look like it fits, because they're just such an esoteric army. So yeah, they're just my passion, my obsession.
To interject quickly, there's something to be said about the Dark Elder Drukhari community. It's, as a community, like across the world, like, you have to name drop people like Scary, like there's someone in every sort of region, and there's so many content creators and painters and phenomenal painters, and just general like good people that want to help each other out. Like when you go, like, via like the various Discords and in our Discord and on Facebook, like there's a real sense of togetherness. Again, I think it brings you back to like there's something special about the army, and I think there's we're sure there's no tangible way to get the stat, but I reckon there's more Drukhari specialists than like any other faction. There's a lot of people.
I honestly think so.
Even if you just like name names off the top of your head, as I would count ourselves as Drukhari specialists, but then you've also got Scary, who's like the Drukhari specialist. And previously we had the Splinter Mind podcast, which we both loved and listened to basically every episode.
So I caught Brian the end of it. That was very cool.
They were amazing, and obviously the Spider himself in Tabletop Tactics, like a massive Drukhari fan. So it was like it's one of those armies that's got the support in the network, and that helps keep the passion alive and draw players in as well. And there's a lot. I think Sky's hit the nail on the head. The Drukhari community just seems to be a really positive community, and so like the Facebook group's wonderful. You get like a real mix of players and painting abilities and all that, but everyone seems, generally speaking, really supportive.
Completely. Yeah, no, absolutely right. And I think Scary very influential as well. And as there's been a few factions, especially like yourselves, Julio in the UK as well as another one you can name, where it's like there are people who have played this book the whole way through. I can't think of many books that have had players who have literally doubled down on them. At a very strong level for the entire time, right? Which again I think speaks to the passion of the faction, speaks to the we got a really cracking book, which we'll get onto in a second as well, speaks to the power and the flexibility of that as well. But yeah, it's a really, really cool thing to see. The conversion side of thing is fun, right? Because there's nothing more Drukhari than converting things. They're master converters. That's what they do. They're always looking at something going, I could put a big claw on that and a mask and have it chop something up for me. So
I could turn that guy into a chair.
Yeah, exactly. We're just doing their bidding, and it's always great fun converting stuff up to fit in the army. The multiple schemes is a relief as well. And I'm someone who always likes to try different things out painting wise, and it's super fun being able to have 3 sub-factions and just do completely different things. And so massive strength. Right. Let's address the experience, the ride that has been the Drukhari book up until this point. Because obviously the Drukhari book itself came out and was low-key bonkers for a little while. And I remember listening to your show and all of you being like, oh my word, this is so strong. And it must have had almost a year at the top of the game, right? I think in the edition it was very strong for a good chunk of time.
Yeah, I mean they were different builds though. That was the thing, because they kept trying to soft nerf things, and they soft nerf some builds. Obviously, the first one to go was Dark Technomancer Liquefiers, and then they nerfed Raiders and Witches. Because that was running amok, and then people moved on to like Coven heavy builds, which got quoted as like Thick City. I always hated that. I was Meat Mountain myself. Well. I hated Thick City. Meat Mountain made so much more sense, and that's how we always used to call it. Like, because it was you just put all your meaty stuff on the board, and then there's a lot of it.
That was one of my favourite bits, because I think the meta thought they'd got past us at that point, and you were like, but there's a lot of damage too and mortal wounds. So what if I shoved this at you?
Yeah, so what if I shoved Yeah, because it was a thing. It was interesting because it was at the time people were countering the Raider rush with things like the Volkite Culverin Dreadnoughts and stuff, and there was just so much like damage 2 around, and like there were Grey Knights were really good with their side cannons.
Exactly.
And so it was just a case of then myself went to like the LGT that year, took the Artists of Flesh, Talos and Grots, and did really well, and then it kind of exploded from there. Shout out to Lord Zaru, who actually took like Thick City. He took Meat Mountains of LGT in like 2021, was it, or something like that? I can't remember. He took it. He took like 6 Kronos, 6 Talos, and 15 Grotesques, and that was his army. And he did all right. He did pretty well. Like, and then from then you had like others like Anthony Vanella and various other Americans taking on and making it famous. And I think that was the main problem with Drukhari. Like, it's the strength of the book is because it's like 3 mini codexes in one, and you can build like focus on one, or you can like focus on 2, or you can focus on all 3 and bring them all together to make some monstrosity. So it's when they brought the book out and it was as powerful as it was, like each internally balance between the individual units was so strong. When you target one, Drukhari players just switch to another one. And that was it. There was just so many ways to just move to a different thing for a long time. I think the only unit that we all kind of said was, like, to use Sky's term, passable, was the Beast Pack. Like, the Beast units have just been all edition, have just been kind of meh. They've been okay, not great, not broken, but like every other unit in the book has been very good at some point.
Yeah, they've all done something at some stage, right? Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, the depth of the book is fantastic. So like, I always go back to the like the 6th edition, like the Eldar Codex at the time, the insane Codex, which had like, you know, all the D weapons and stuff. And it was completely broken. But internally, it's so well balanced because everything was good. And that's what the Drukhari book reminds me of, that there's multiple builds and the ability to innovate and, like, you know, to pass like something to Dom. Dom invented testicles.
Me
and George privately hate the name, but it's test to skill and precise killers. I've been running it the last 6 months, and it's become one of the most common, like, you know, witch cult obsessions. Like, that custom cult obsession is phenomenal, and people still run Red Grief competitively. And Cursed Blade is still a great choice, and Strife without the Codex supplement, and the Codex supplement is a whole different.
That was also amazing.
Still really good, and there's so many. Covenant Obsessions that are good. Flayed Skull, you know, they had their time, didn't they, in 8th?
Yeah, I love Flayed Skull. I never think it's bad. I look at it and I always go, there's something you could do with that, right? With a ton of Disintegrators ignoring cover, but it's just that Blackheart is so consistent.
Yeah. And you think of like Double Cabal was massive for a while. I ran Double Court, and there was just there's so much, like, the depth of the Codex, but also the add-ons. Even like, do you remember the Black Zone Urgles? Like, there's so much random stuff. Yeah, the little Erics. There's so much stuff.
Eric was ridiculous. Yeah,
so Eric was awesome. He single-handedly won me the 5-0 at LGT. Like, just that little dude
just throwing another bit of data on his pile. Yeah, he's just got this huge mountain.
He's got all the data.
Yeah. And the thing is, Drukhari, I think trading has become like the buzzword of Ninth, right? Like, it's all about trading, and staging is like the new buzzword everyone talks about. But no army trades better than Drukhari. No one can like out obsec better than Drukhari. And I think that's where they've just done well throughout the whole edition. And again, a lot of people have stuck to them. I think a trend I've noticed recently, you know, led by Dark Dom, is a lot of Drukhari mains are moving to demons. But I think that's probably something to be said for probably a similar. Like,
it's a similar style,
a bit of sort of jank, a bit of speed, a bit of fun in that sense. I think I'd probably like to play
and sneaky durability as well.
Sneaky, low key durability.
Drukhari are really good at low key durability. Like, you don't think they're that durable, but then you run through, like, everything's got an invul save, and then most of it has a feel no pain save. And they can be healed, and they have like higher toughness than you expect for an Eldar and stuff. So, and I think Chaos are a lot like they have like low key durability. Like, they always have their save. They have shenanigans where they can move around and do other things and stuff. So
and it's the fact with Drukhari, I always find in a game at some point something isn't going to die, like my opponent thinks it's going to die. And they're one of those armies that's so good at taking advantage of a mistake or a slip, right? That's one of the things I love about them, right? If you expose something, I'm in. I'm going to get it. I'm going to make a hole. And yeah, I think that's one of the great things about them.
How many times do you run 3 Reaver jet bikes into your opponent's lines, and they're like, this heavy bolt will kill them? And it's like, there's one little Reaver jet bikes here.
He's
going to do behind enemy lines again. Like,
yeah, I did it against a Manny in the GT, and it was he got greedy and he decided to split his fire with his the outer line of sight Space Marines.
The Desolation.
Yeah, he had 2 squads of like 9 or 10 Desolation Marines, and he got greedy to try and take out both my Reavers and my Mandrakes turn 1, and killed one Reaver squad, down to 1 man, and then killed the Mandrakes down to 2 man. So in my turn 1, the Reaver went over, got behind enemy lines, didn't really care what else he did. I think he blasted a Wolfen in the face, and the Mandrakes went up into the shadows, and then came down next turn and got me behind enemy lines, and then I rolled a 1 on RBD as well on them, just to rub salt in the wound. So, it was like, just that low durability, like, because everyone thinks that Drukhari, they're going to die really easy to pretty much anything, and that is true in a lot of cases. But the thing is, if you leave even one Drukhari model alive, it's going to annoy the hell out of you. I've lost count how many times I've been left on 1 rack. And that 1 rack has like done so much work, and it's why I love the army. Like, they're just really annoying.
That's it. Annoying is right, and they're one of those armies that makes your opponent sweat. You take some dealing with. It's very thematic because all this stuff's hidden away, and they know they've got 25 units to get through, and you've hidden them all away, and you're like, I'm not going to make this quick or easy. This is, if you want to get this, you're going to have to come and kill it properly, or it's going to get you.
I was liking it not so much in this edition, previous editions when like Venom Spam and stuff like when Carbonite Warriors were really good, and I was always liking fighting Drukhari to fighting a Hornet's Nest. Like, you're not going to get killed by like 1 Hornet, you're going to get killed by like all the Hornets, and they're all equally dangerous. So which Hornet do you kill first? Like, you kind of, and it's that, like, target priority is quite difficult with Drukhari.
Really, really is, yeah.
Like, and you can really overwhelm your opponent by just throwing everything at him, and it'll be like, well, I can't kill everything, and whatever I don't kill is going to come and kill me. So where do I begin? And like, it can be quite an overwhelming army to face, and particularly right at the start of 9th when the book came out, and the costings were
it was crazy how much
generous.
It's just a horde, right? An elite horde. It was crazy.
It was mental. They were way too cheap. I think we're starting now at the end of 9th we're at a good place. Like, I think there's some things that are maybe slightly too expensive, but you can kind of live with it, to be honest, because like, it's the end of the edition, and there's other stuff in the games and other codexes that have like really cheap and broken stuff, so it's kind of meh.
I completely agree. And I think, as you say, talking about Drukhari at the end of the edition, obviously that's where we're going to go in a second, but I think the book holds up very well in terms of, you've still got a fantastic suite of units, you've got this amazing utility. I think it struggles a bit with, there's just some mechanics and things can do that have come into the mix later in the edition that at times can be a bit of a faff for Drukhari. Phase caps can be a pain in the arse sometimes. Some of the sort of the no rerolls stuff can be a real pest.
Transhuman.
Transhuman. Well, that's always been a pain in the ass. But I think in terms of just the raw power to get jobs done, still got a fantastic suite of units, and you look at stuff, and especially now, like Core's back on the pain engines, which we'll talk about because they were in the wilderness for a little bit. So good. That's a really optimistic place, and I'll be really interested to see. I'm hoping they don't punish us for having a little bit too much of a party in 9th. We'll see. I'm sure it'll be fine. In terms of the place in the game, you guys have alluded to it already, but let's talk about what makes the Drukhari army special within the kind of wider meta. What are its big strengths? What does it do well? What's its sort of purpose on the whole spectrum of armies in terms of their design and their function as you guys see it?
So I think in terms of just throughout 9th, it's about, without retracing what I was saying earlier about the trading, but they're very good at melee.
Yeah.
Not as good in shooting anymore, especially like with Treeborn and Double Treeborn. A lot of people say Corsair Void Reavers could be an answer. I think there's definitely a list out there with lots of Void Reavers. I know, George, you were looking at it at one point. But it's the ability for OBSEC? And is the question about arcs or just about the addition?
I think in general across time, but if you want to zoom in on arcs, you absolutely can.
Especially so in arcs with the news attachment, so many people aren't taking troops. And I find it bewildering. So I've noticed I've had an uptick in the performance in arcs with Drukhari, and I think that's down to three things. One, everyone's forgotten Drukhari. The amount of players who I play, and they're like, I always say, like, Drukhari, I always try to avoid gotchas. And they're like, oh, I haven't played them for a year. I haven't played them for X amount of time. Or they're like, oh, yeah, I've played them. I played my mates. But I play an entirely different flavour of Drukhari to what their friends play. So they're not used to Hemoxites. They don't know what Court do, etc. And people aren't taking troops as much. And Drukhari are king of the 5 racks run here. Or, I trick out 5 witches with Phantasm and Hypex, and they go 27 or 28 out of a Raider onto the home objective, take that, and they're like, what?
Again, the red grief version of that unit is horrific. Like you can touch your opponent's backfield objective turn 1, and they just don't expect
bonkers.
it.
Like,
So there's so much in that sense, and there's still a lot of killability in there. But also, like, my final point was behind enemy lines has become absolutely massive. It's so big. So Drukhari have always sort of missed that third killer secondary. Like we've never really had those auto 15s that everyone else has. So
not since
there's a lot of people at home going to be like, don't play a little violin like Drukhari plays. We've had our time in the sun, and I don't care because I was there during the 7th where I would get tabled every game by Tau.
They were painful.
It was a rough time, man. It was a rough time. It's our time in the stolen sun. I don't care. But it's so R&D, retrieve data, whatever data it is, like that's a mainstay. You can build for that. You move to banners, and obviously take them alive is probably the auto third if you don't know what you're going to take.
I think usually
And then, but for me, behind enemy lines, like you take engage. Herd got nerfed, but behind enemy lines it's so much easier. But what it allows you to play your own game. Whereas I would play majority of games with engage, and I start my game and it'd be like, well, stuff's in my home quarter, and then some Reaver's going to go over here, some Mandrakes will probably teleport here, and I need to start working out what's going to survive the game, what's going to be here turn 3, what's going to be here turn 3. Whereas now, behind enemy lines, it feels a bit copy and paste, but it's, Reavers go. Reavers go. There's the Mandrakes and the Warriors coming now. Or like by turn 4, you'd like to think you're going to be in their zone anyway.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Eventually there's a push to be made, right? But it means you can take your time again, which is really important, I think. I think that's, in terms of general play, that's something that I think is really important with Drukhari, is actually it rewards very patient play. You're making your openings, you're waiting for your moment. As you say, you've got a lot of assets. Usually that's one of the big strengths of the army. You've got a bunch of little units. As you say, OBSEC is something, actually, if you build lists the right way, we can have so much OBSEC. I played against Rob Kimpton's Drukhari the other day, and he had a beautiful list where, again, there's just so many little 5-mans of witches, and they just, every turn, it's like, if you think you're getting proud of midfield, he's a phenomenal player. Lovely guy, really like Rob. And again, you can build these lists that will just catch out any primary slip that your opponent makes across the game, across the entire board. And it feels like when Drukhari are balanced right, you do that, you burn out all your assets, you're often basically dead at the end, but you've got a ton of points and you've taken a ton of points off them. And all is right with the world, right? And it was one of the reasons we could tell that the 9th book was a bit wrong, because it's like, I'm not really like dying and winning anymore. They're kind of dying and I'm winning, and it doesn't feel exactly
it was
like
also, it was also that you weren't running out of assets. Like there were so many games at the start of 9th when the Codex came out, and you were tabling your opponent, and I would still have like Incubi and Witches in Raiders that just didn't need to come out. I'm
there's like a
this isn't right.
Wave, right? It's completely crazy.
Like the Drukhari Codex, ever since its sort of revamp in 5th, has always been about asset management and you having to utilize each one as much as you can before it dies. And obviously you're going to get the bad trades, you're going to get the good trades, but like this 9th book in particular, like when it came out and the costings were just on the low end of okay, and you were just left in games where you were like, I've still got stuff left to throw at him, like, and it wasn't like the first wave of Drukhari that killed you. It was like the second and third, and then you were like, I've still got a 4th wave to throw at you. This doesn't.
Yeah, that's it.
Like
it's crazy, right?
It's but yeah, I think now it's it's in a good place. Like most games, as I say, like most games you play, by the end of turn 4 or 5, your asset pool is very low. But you can still score points well, because it's like behind enemy lines is a great one, because by the time you get to turn 4 and 5, you're probably in his face anyway. So even if you haven't got the specific assets that you've designed, like your Reaver Darts, like your Mandrakes, you've probably got like 1 Wound Raiders, or like a Succubus, or like something, or like the one lone rack that survived the Raider explosion that now can just hide behind a wall and get me 3 points behind enemy lines and stuff. So it's such a fun army to play because of that asset management, and it's not an army that you sort of spam thing. I know it sounds silly, but you could spam Venoms and stuff, but you're not. It's not going to do that great. You need redundancy, but across multiple units. You can't just have like, I'm going to have 12 Lehman Russ tanks. You just can't. Like, you can have 3 Ravagers, but they're not going to do a lot. Or you can have 3 Incubi squads, and you can have like 3 Witch squads. And it's you just need the redundancy, but across multiple different units that do slightly different, or slightly more or less efficient, and you need to use those accordingly.
No, completely. And it's one of those armies that I think you level up very quickly when you're playing it, right? I'd played a bit of Craft Wars before, but I'd mostly played like Nurgle, Death Guard, and Demons and stuff before that, and that's a good starter army. That was a sensible place to start. I just shove it forward, half of it's still alive after like taking an arm in the face and on you go. But with Drukhari, it's like, if you put your hand in the wrong place, you just don't have a hand. That's how the army works. Like, absolutely, with the exception of Coven, who can give you like a pivot, but again, you actually have to use it very carefully, right? Otherwise, even Coven go down.
I mean, in Ninth, the damage profiles of Ninth have obviously just been crazy.
Crazy, and
there are loads of things that you just look at, even if you're like playing a Coven heavy list, and you're like, this just picks me up. Like, I think the Reaper of Obliterax comes to mind. Like, a flyer of a Reaper of Obliterax just looks at a squad of Grotesques and just goes nom nom nom, and you're like, that's like some. And the pre-nerfed Kassakin with that stupid flag. I played a game against it previously, and like 1 Kassakin unit picked up 9 Grotesques without even blinking, and I was just like, this is okay.
This is silly.
But so it's one of those things, like, you still have to play cagey, and Drukhari have always lived and died by their transports. I think it's very difficult to play a Drukhari army without transports, because they just do so many things. They give you the movement. Like, Drukhari without transports is actually not overly quick compared to some of the armies that are around at the moment. And so you live and die by your transports, and you do that turn 1 staging, and your transports move you up. They also act as that extra layer of defense where your opponent has to blow up the transport before they can get to the juicy innards, because we lost that.
You can have a lot of fun with sequencing, can't you? That's the thing. A bad opponent just falls into sequencing with destroying transports so many times, so it's like, killed that, that's fine, you're actually just giving me points, because
the Russian dollar effect is awesome. The Russian dollar is like, I'm going to kill that Venom. It's like, okay, but then my Obsec Witches pop out, now you've just given me that primary. It's one of those things. Like, I think Drukhari have been on as you said, like a bit of a roller coaster throughout Ninth. In Arcs, behind enemy lines has helped a lot. The fact that the player base has dropped like a lot towards the end of Ninth. I think we're back down to like the 2-3% kind of region.
Which is where they normally are, right?
Lower. Yeah, and that's always been where we have been historically. It was really weird, like, when you go to at their prime and you go LGT, and they were like 10% of the meta, and you're like, where have all these?
Very unsettling. Yeah, it was a weird time.
But and I think now we're back, and that helps a lot, because, like Paulie said, you do come across players that aren't experienced at facing Drukhari, and you don't do any gotchas or anything like that, because you're not those kind of players. But the experience into playing into those factions helps a lot, because like as a target priority, engagement, like benefits and all this kind of stuff. So and it's easy to forget those things. It's easy to forget that like a squad of 5 Incubi will quite happily go into a 10-man Space Marine squad and eat them. Like it's and equally, like the Talos, who we haven't seen for ages, now they're suddenly back, and everyone's like, what do they do again? And you're like, oh, they do this. And they're like, oh, they're a lot tougher to kill than I thought they'd be. And you're like, yeah. And they hit hard as well.
They really do. Yeah, I've been having some fun with mine as well. But actually, this is where I think you're going to step in, George, because obviously you've had some recent success with the aforementioned Talos. So I thought maybe it would be a nice time to invite you to chat a little bit about how you're building for the current game and talk through your recent experience. I'd be really interested to hear about it.
So obviously, those of you who are up to date with the balance update, we got core back on our paint engines and our Kronos, which is awesome because they took it away from us I didn't really understand why. They just kind of took it away, and then
it was a double nerf, wasn't it? When they took
it was a double nerf.
City down. Yeah.
Try and stop the thick city, and they took core away, which was really annoying because it was like there's not a lot of synergies with the Talos. Really, it was like the Realspace Raiders rerolls, reroll ones to hit if you're near the Archon, the Prey on the Weak stratagem, which only affects core, which again is rerolls to hit. And the healing ability from Kronos. If you are running Kronos and Talos, if a Kronos kills a model, then it can heal a Talos. That was really the only synergy. But it was and the +1 toughness, which was massive.
That was a big deal. Yeah,
the +1 toughness is huge. And I'd forgotten until I started playing them again. I'd forgotten how big a deal going from T6 to T7 can be. It is huge. I took a list as soon as they came back to core. I put Talos back in my army. They're one of my favorite models. I absolutely love using them.
It doesn't feel right if I don't have 3 in the middle going up and back. And they're a great. Enjoy it.
They're a great anchor unit. They're like the anvil of Drukhari, where you can put the Talos in the middle or on a flank, and then you can swing the rest of your army around the Talos. And it's just a great play. It's just a great diversity of gameplay. So the Talos went straight back in. I'm always quite experimental with my build, so I wanted to try out a pure offense build. So I took Splinter Blades and Master Torturers, which is
a lovely, lovely combo. Yeah,
it's a really good combo. So Splinter Blades is custom Coven Obsession. Splinter Blades gives you exploding 6s in melee, and the Master Torturers reduces the CP cost of Torturer's Craft, which is your full reroll to wound by 1. So on Talos and Grotesques, it becomes 1 CP. Yeah. On Rax that are less than a 10 or less models, it becomes nothing. It becomes free, which makes your little rack units amazingly efficient. You can have a little 5-man rack with an extra corrosive whip, and for 0 CP, you could obviously turn 3 onwards. You're hitting on 2s with what is it? It's 8 with 15 poison 4-up attacks, and you're rerolling all wounds. You can do some real work with that.
Yeah. They go through all sorts of small units.
With exploding 6s as well. It's really good. But on the Talos, I wanted to find out because I wanted those rare moments where you roll on the Ichor injectors and you roll 6s on the Ichor injectors to get the extra. It's really good. Game 1 I had it into Grey Knights, which isn't the most efficient way because obviously they get the 5-up shrug, but I did roll double 6, so I got 5 D3 mortal wounds off with the Ichor injectors, which was funny. But so I took that, and I took some Grotesques because I've just converted up a load using the Crypt Fiends, and I really love them. And I took a classic Realspace raid because we're Realspace Raiders. So I had a combat Archon with Hatred Eternal and Jim Blade, like Mini Drazar, Succubus that everyone knows and hates. Master Archon, Master Succubus, Master Homunculus. The Homunculus had the Poisonous Ampule, which was really fun to use, actually.
Good,
Yeah, it's really good. And it helps, again, like we aforementioned, one of the problems Drukhari have are phase caps, and the Poisonous Ampule works in the movement phase, so it's another source of damage in a different phase, so that helps a bit.
It's massive. And in an era when Rights of War is common, it becomes super valuable as well.
The Rights of
War off for a turn. It feels so good.
Like Sky said, because Arcs, people are not taking the troop tax as much, and they're relying on things like Rights of War. And so when you go Poisonous Ampule and you're like, I'll just throw it at that character, and suddenly he turns off his OBSEC aura, and you're like, okay, great, now all your Sky Claws or your whatever aren't OBSEC anymore. Here's my little rack. That's now my objective. So it was a unit of Talos, 2 units of Grotesques, the Reaver Darts, squad of Mandrakes, some blood brides with testy killers, a little 5-man unit of Carbolites, and a couple of 5-man units of Racks, and then some Incubi as well on top. So really kind of all-round general list.
Yeah, really. Combined arms, but that's, again, that you can get so much versatility out of a list like that.
Yeah,
and Talos and Grotesque in as a hammer with Torturous Crowd, because you just know they're going to get it done with the rerolls to win.
Yeah,
that's super good.
And with the Splinter Blades thing, they're really good at trading. So it was all round. It was a really fun build. So long story short, because I don't want to bore everyone with like the tales of my accolades, but I went to a GT, little local one, because I'm not doing any majors this year. Maybe it'll change with 10th, I don't know. But there was I think it was 30 players, mostly local lads, and I faced Grey Knights, Drukhari mirror into friend of the show Simon Laxton, another great diehard Drukhari aficionado that seems to be cursed that whenever we go into an event together, like 99% of the time we'll face each other, which is just I hate it. Like, not that I hate playing him, I love the guy, but it's just like you don't want the only other Drukhari player to go into. Feel right. Like, you don't want it. But, Grey Knights again, Votan for the first time. Never faced Votan before, so that was an interesting game. Okay. And then the final was against the one and only Manny with the Space Wolf list.
Yes.
Yeah.
Who are sort of blue Drukhari with jump packs, aren't they, in a way? Don't you think? That sort of hide and pounce and punch and trade, it's very us, in a way.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very, very strong trading army. The amount of Melter and Thunder Hammers and everything. Space Marines are so cheap right now. It's crazy. But anyway, I managed to go 5-0, which was pretty incredible, to be honest.
Man. Yeah,
it's pretty incredible. I was very surprised. And to beat Manny in the final, that was one of the toughest games I've ever played. And I've faced Manny a couple of times before at other events, and they've always been close games, but he's come out on top because it's Manny Chima, and he's a very good player.
He's fantastic.
So to get the win against him was awesome, but also to face into what is widely considered kind of top of the meta, like the Space Wolf, like Wolfguard, Wolfen, Sky Claws, Desolation Marines. Like I think it's pretty fair to say that's kind of top meta at the moment.
It must be in the top 3 armies in the game, without a doubt.
Yeah. So that was a really interesting game, and it was one because I rolled 5 up, feel no pains like a demon, turn 4, and 2 because you played really cagey. Because the Space Marine secondaries are to do with being aggressive. Like you got Shock Assault, you got Codex Warfare, and he took no prisoners, I think. I can't remember now. But it was all to do with killing me. So I just basically didn't expose myself turns 1 and 2. And then turn 3, I went full tilt, like everything at him, and shut down all his assets with my assets. And then it was just a slugfest from then on, basically. And even then, it was a very, very close game. I think there was only 4 points in it. And it just went in my favor at the end, which was wonderful. And again, it was just that asset management, just that knowing when to go, setting up, only giving away minimal, only giving away minimal opportunities until then. And then once you are ready to go, once these push just that little bit too far, you pounce and you do your business.
Because that's the nature of Drukhari movement, isn't it? As you guys have alluded to, there are quicker armies. There are armies with more scary reach in different ways, but across that sort of mid distance, people never quite know how far away is safe, right? People always end up, in the end, getting danger close, and you just chuck out, and it's great.
I think it's indicative of, like, the advance and charge is massive, and like the amount of charges I make in games is because it's not because I'm rolling like 9 inch charges, because I'm getting into a position where I only have to make like a 3-inch charge. So you're probably going to make it, and you save your CP just in case you do roll that snake eyes, because a Drukhari unit that fails its charge dies, basically.
Oh, it does. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Like, if a Drukhari unit is left out in the open, it dies the following turn. So you need to make those charges, and you need to position yourself in a way where you're going to do that most of the time. And then you have those little, like, janky shenanigan moments that we all love.
Yeah. That's a massive achievement, though, man. And I think, as I say, it's the top of the game. Having a bunch of Marines in it, in theory, should be something Drukhari like, right? Because we quite like killing Marines. But the sheer volume of units they have, the scoring they have, and the artillery they have makes it a real challenge at the moment. So it sounds like you've done very well.
It's also the 1-2 punch that Marines can do. So the best thing into Drukhari is units that can do the 1-2 punch. So like a unit of Wolf Guard with combi melters is perfect because they can move over, melt a gun your raider, and then charge the guys inside and kill them. That is the thing that kills Drukhari. And there's a lot of that in the game at the moment. There's a lot of units in the Space Marine book that's capable of doing that 1-2 punch, or they can do the move up, then the Desolation Marines kill you without a line of sight.
They can work in tandem.
And it works in tandem, and it's very effective and hard to combat. But yeah.
No, that's really, really cool. And so I think it's interesting because that's also the Coven build I've been experimenting with, where you just go, well, I'm trying not to get shot too much till I'm fighting. I just need to make sure the melee output is as terrifying as it can possibly be, right? And those two traits go together so well. And Talos being able to benefit from the attacking strats and stuff again goes a really long way. But no, I mean, it's still a fantastic achievement. It's because Drukhari have been in a lower place in the meta in general in the last sort of year or so. So I think to 5-0 with them is a fantastic achievement. So well done.
Yeah, it's really good. And really shout to Sky as well, because the Sky's been doing really well at much bigger events.
Paulie has been just consistent as all hell. He will not be stopped. He's ridiculous.
He's unstoppable.
He must have been 80% win rate at pretty much every event he's been at the whole time in recent times.
Do you know what? Going back to Rob Kimpton, he messaged me, and I think we were running the same sort of loadout of sessions.
Yeah.
So we were both running Blackheart, Prophets of Flesh, and then Testicles. And I think our win rate was something stupid like 91% because no other Drukhari player was doing that. We were lifting. And also, that's almost another thing to discuss, where I think faction specialists and diehards I'll never say I'm a great player. I think I'm a good player. I'm probably, I like to go positive at events, but I surprised myself by doing more 4-1s than 3-2s recently. But there's a lot of people who an army won't be used as much. Like the meta chasers, as it were, will jump to whatever's hot. So they'll leave Drukhari, whereas, the diehards will stick to their army, but do well because they're probably might be a good player or, good to the army or both. And so I think that almost masks it, where potentially in an army which isn't played that much might actually not be as good, but it's kept afloat by player skill.
Yeah, completely. And I think where you have those dedicated communities, that does skew win rates a little bit. Drukhari is definitely one of those armies. I think you see it with the various elf factions when at different points, because there's not that many players, but they do well and they care about it a lot. You get that kind of bump in that sense. But it's been really interesting to watch you continuing to innovate and do really well with it. And that's where the faction specialism comes in, because if you understand why things are the way they are in the current game, you can respond and design right. I think so many people jump around armies because they've been told they're good. They don't really know why they're good. They don't really know how they interact with other things and what the sort of mechanics of that is. Top players, slightly different story, but I think people sort of moving from army to army because they get the sense of this is the thing I should be playing, miss out on that. Whereas if you understand an army inside out, you can take advantage of that and respond to and adapt to the challenges, right? Yeah.
It also allows you to tailor and micro adapt.
Completely. Yeah.
The list that me and Sky do, there are a lot of similarities. We both find there are units that we both like playing. But the more you play it, the more you realize, actually, I don't really like that. I'm going to change it. I said I did really well with the Splinter Blades Master Torturers, and I think it's really good. For me, though, I've played a few games into the World Eaters and the Demons matchup recently. And it's the World Eaters in particular is actually really hard for Drukhari because they do what we do, but better with better secondaries.
Yeah, we're bringing them exactly what they want, right? Which is a bloodbath.
It's really they want to kill and be killed on objectives. We want to kill you on objectives, and we're probably going to die in the process because we're Drukhari. So it's it's a really tough matchup. So specifically, really for that, and there's quite a heavy amount of World Eaters players around at the moment because they're an easy army to collect. They're new, and in those matchups, I found it really hard. So I've moved back to the classic Artist of Flesh. Purely for that matchup because it's and a few others like the Votan matchup it really helps in and I've noticed there's a lot of like strength 7 or below weapons knocking around at the moment that are doing the damage 2 damage 3 game and I think Artist is probably the way I'm going to go for the rest of the edition.
Yeah. So you've just demonstrated exactly what I was talking about, right? You can see that's an iterative process at work. You've assessed it. You're looking at what's around you. You know what your faction has. You found the tool, and that's actually how to do well in this game and how to thrive, right? You need to be able to understand the interaction of something you want to play with all sorts of things.
It's really important to just pay attention to what's around you. Like you don't want to tailor your list specifically to be like one guy, like unless you really don't like that guy. Like I'm sure there's some of my friends down here that are specifically designing lists to beat me because I'm that guy. But like I welcome the challenge, and for me it's I noticed that the lists in my play style I was really struggling into the World Eaters matchup because they're very good at trading, and even if you fight first on it, because I thought originally their weakness would be fight last mechanics, which we have a lot of with things like Tormentor Helms, Ancient Evil, Vexator Mask. I thought, I'll just make them fight last and kill them before they fight. But then they have a fight on Death Strat, and you're like,
that's
great.
Like, it's just like Bile was a nightmare, right? Like it's the same thing.
Bile was horrendous.
Bile was a real low point for me.
Bile and Emperor's Children, I think, have been our two worst engagements, and Admech when they were at their very best. But but Bile was very, very difficult to play into and really boring, if I'm honest. It was a really dull game. And there was a
sort of inevitability to it, wasn't there?
It's just uninteractive, and I think the Emperor's Children matchup was very tough for Drukhari because they just seemed to counter us on like every level. They were tougher. They ignored our defenses, and they fought first everywhere.
I think the toolkit played well with, and the key thing here is because I've got a couple of friends who play Emperor's Children. CP asset management is crucial because what I always do is tease around the edges, wait for them to get a bit overexcited with CP, and then hit them. Because if you have 3 or 4 CP as Emperor's Children and Drukhari come into you, you can just end their entire game. But if you don't have that, they can't. And so you just have to probe and pick and wait until that moment, and then you can go. So Vex is huge in a game like that, right? Because if they have the tools, you lose. Like you just lose.
And again, I think with the changes to the CP and Arcs of Omen, that's helped a lot because most armies are only starting the game with like 1 or 2, as opposed to like 6.
So Vex is back as a super powerful tool, I think.
Like again, in my game against Manny, that I vected, I knew he would do it because I collect Space Wars as well. Not that I've played them in ever, but I've got the Codex. But I knew that he'd want to do Keen Senses straight away.
Yeah, and I was going to say that would be top of my list, right?
The moment he Keen Senses on the Desolation Marines, because I knew he'd want to do Keen Senses on one and then Chapter Master rerolls on the other.
Yeah.
So I just went, right, I'm going to Vect Keen Senses, and then he couldn't really use it for the rest of the game, which really nulled a lot of their output.
That's massive.
And so I could hide. It allowed me to hide because he couldn't use Keen Senses on me. Agents of Vex is a crazy, or really nice strat, and I really like how they changed it because it was a bit stupid in the previous codex where it was like I'll just counter your stratagem. That was a bit meh. But the ability now of making your opponents one of their stratagems, if you know which one they're going to want to use a lot, and you can get a lot of use out of it.
And that again, it really rewards that understanding of what your opponent's army does, right? Because you're just spotting that little thing that they're leaning on and just saying, I'm just going to kick that out, see how you do.
I mean, most games, if I'm honest, I use it for the combat interrupt strat.
It's phenomenal for that.
Because you'll just be like, okay, I'll combat interrupt here, and you're like, okay, now that's 3 CP, you're probably not going to be able to use that for the rest of the game, so I'm going to control the engagements a lot better.
Completely. Okay, well, I'm gonna indulge myself with another question because I'm enjoying myself. So I have one more question, then I'll let you guys go. And this is looking ahead, okay? Because we've been up the roller coaster, down, maybe back up again with you guys leading the way.
And we got a new army, Tom. What are you on about?
Well, exactly. Always going to be the best army. That's never in doubt. So for 10th edition, wish listing, a little bit of indulgent wish listing. What is it you want to see? What's something you'd like to see happen for Drukhari? Whether that's a rule or a model or a tool, what's something you'd really like to see happen for us in this edition?
You go first, Sky. I've talked enough.
He's walked into the Duke Sliskus trap, hasn't he?
I go willingly. I go willingly into the trap. It's fine.
What do I want from 10th? I think we've got a lot. I guess I'll start it off by saying I've really enjoyed 9th. I think 9th has been
so good. Yeah,
a really good edition. Like editions I didn't play 4th. I love 3rd, but I think it's rose-tinted glasses. But there's elements of 3rd that I really like, and I think with like independent characters kind of coming back in a way, but obviously being locked into units, it's a bit like that in 5th, isn't it? Which is quite nice.
Except hopefully without the Death Stars.
Yeah, and I think for me, there's definitely a bit of hopes and fears here, where like I do worry about Death Stars coming back. I do worry. We don't know terrain fully yet, do we? So like, don't quite. And I think obscuring terrain's been a big part of why Drukhari have been good. I think it's also rightful. It's a good thing that we've had. I think I worry about range rotation. I think me and G before in our private Skype before this were talking about it. About is everything going to make it? Like, so currently 40% of the Drukhari model range is unavailable. I think at the time of recording, I think it's just gone off availability again. So you can't buy Court, you can't buy Mandrakes.
Beasts.
Court are Beasts we spoke about is skippable, but Courts are like the first unit on my army list. Mandrakes, I haven't played a game without Mandrakes for a while. So it's a case of, are they going to make it into 10th? And then Bloodbrides and Hemoxites and Trueborn came back. Hemoxites were new for this edition. Are they going to make it into 10th? And I guess there's a few sort of fears there. But at the same time, bit of PMA, a bit of positive mental attitude, and the fact that certainty is a really important human need, going a bit basic psychology here. We know that Drukhari aren't going to get a codex until summer 2024 at the earliest, which a lot of people are like, oh no. But it's, for me, that gives me over a year we know that when these index cards come out, that's our army for a while.
You've got a rule set locked in, right?
You can focus on that, and you can really deep dive into that and work out what works for you without the sort of worry that, this codex is going to drop months later. As the converter in me, it means that, I can work on lots more conversions. I know what's going to be what. But also there's a lot of credence there or precedence, where range refreshes, unless you're part of like the very first bit where Marines and Necrons via Indomitus last time, and obviously Tyrion is going to get a range refresh now. But later in edition, you got more chance of getting.
You absolutely do. Especially summer, man. Summer is when big things happen.
They tend to do bigger releases in the summer.
That's it. Summer and or Christmas, you could well be in the frame.
And the fact that Eldari altogether, like normally you'd think there's probably a lot of people out there who collect all Eldari. Like I've got some Harlequins. I think so. Right now, I'm taking a break from 9th until 10th. Whereas if I was going to continue, or say this edition was going to go on for another year, I would probably start looking at Harlequins. I think to solve that, easy third warp ritual, secondary as it were. But I think as a opportunity for a refresh is there, and I think we need it. So back to the elf sort of specialist. There's no Eldari at all. So is there something for Eldari altogether? Love to see anything, especially for Drukhari, to wish list. We've spoken about a lot on the Realspace Raiders podcast about things we want, but I've always felt Vex should stay in the shadows, not be a model.
I kind of see what you mean.
But the fact you've got the Silent King and Gilliman and the Lion now, and Abaddon, the big players are there, so I think Vex as a big player probably should be in the game in that sense. And I think
it just wouldn't be him though, would it? It would be one of his doppelgangers.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's it. And so Dark Elder came out in '98. Had a few more releases in '99, and nothing until 2010. Little second wave in 2011. We've been drip fed like Incubi here and there.
Yeah, Incubi and Draz was nice, right?
And obviously we got the 2014 plastic wave where the Bomber came out and stuff like that, which is great. But I think now we need that injection of
we need at least our fine casts getting gone.
Yeah, at the very least, like Grotesque, Mandrake's Court, right? It would be nice to see those as proper units.
But it's, without sounding greedy, I want more. I want new units now. I think to see some of those redone in plastic, that'd be really good. But I think we need new models. And actually, Drukhari having such a strong codex and so many people picking up Drukhari, the sales obviously probably must be the highest in Drukhari history. And it's we've had a lot of people jump on the bandwagon, but if thanks to them, does that mean that we're going to get new plastics in, toss out a year, 2024, 2025, then so be it. But just bring me back Duke's Liscus, Duke's the man. That's it. I'll take more Corsairs. I love Corsairs. And I think
Corsair stuff would be cool.
Something where wasn't the question as it were, but the thing I'm intrigued the most is how Corsairs work, and can we still keep adding them to Drukhari the way we do?
Yeah. Sure. How about you, Judge?
Yeah, similar. The range update and some new kits would be lovely. As far as rules wise, my main thing in 10th is I'm gonna get my Incarn back on the board because I haven't been able to. I haven't been able to play him. It's my favorite model. I spent a lot of time building and painting mine. And I haven't been able to use him because I bought him when it first came out, when they did the Gathering Storm, and you used to be able to just slot him into your Drukhari army. And I absolutely loved it. And I don't think I've really had as much fun playing Dark Elder as I did when I had the Incarn in my list.
Man. End of 8th I played that, and it was so fun because
it was so much fun.
Because you had Incarn more than Drukhari.
Because you had the Venom spam, and it just worked so well with it because it was the Russian doll effect. You added to it. It was another doll. You were like, okay, I've got my Venom on this objective, and then you blow it up, and the witches get out, and the Venom turned into an Incarn. And it was like. That I just absolutely love. So for me, I'm really interested to see what GW do with Inari. I was a bit disappointed they made it a craft world. If I'm honest, I've always really hoped that they would do an Inari book, like an Inari army, and have in the book limited units from all the different factions, like have Harlequin troops. Cool. Have some of the aspect warriors, have like Carbolite warriors and witches, have like that kind of thing. And then they could have their own points, their own data sheets, and they could be different to what you get in like the Asuriani book and the Drukhari book, and they could be pointed differently. And I felt like that was the better way to go. But it's up to the GW design team. So I'm really interested to see what they do with Inari. I really want to try and get the Incarn out. If they do keep it as like a craft world, I'll just have to fork out for some Aspect Warriors, I guess, which is no bad thing because I love Aspect Warriors. So
some nice new models now.
Yeah, they are fantastic. And hopefully throughout the course of 10th, we'll get some more plastic aspects like Striker Scorpions and Warp Spiders.
Karandras, let's have you. Karandras and Warp Spiders will be all over that.
Definitely. I love Warp Spiders. Like, absolutely love Warp Spiders. Cool. It's just a shame the model's horrendous.
But, they are awful.
Really interested to see what Inari. But from a Drukhari's perspective, I think the main weakness this book has had, and really the only weakness, is our shooting is terrible. It's gone from being like one of the better shooting armies when you used to have like Venom spam with lots of Carbolites, even at the very beginning, like double Trueborn. Obviously the craziness that was the Dark Technomancer liquefiers. Why I never understood why they just nerfed it, just said, you don't get it. They should have just reworded it and said it's on your wound roll rather than your hit roll. Then suddenly there's that trade-off. It's like, okay, my liquefiers can do damage 2 and +1 to wound, which makes them crazy. But if I roll a 1 to wound, I kill my rack, and suddenly they're not that great. Like they're just like a trading piece again. Regardless, really want Carbolites split. I want splinter weapons to be good, like to be usable. Because in 9th I honestly think they've literally been the worst baseline gun in the entire game. Like,
they've been pretty
even las guns are better than splinter rifles, like right now, because you can build and make them better with like orders and strats and all that kind of stuff. And just poison 4+ with no AP and one shot, it just doesn't do anything. It doesn't do anything in ninth.
Yeah.
And I really want them to bring that back. And there's various ways I could think about it, and we have discussed it on the podcast before. I like the idea of having just more volume. Like, to me, splinter weapons are like they just drown you in a hail of crystalline shards that are all laced with the most toxic. I can't remember. Toxic. That's the word I'm looking for.
Toxic will do it. Yeah.
Toxic venoms that the universe has to offer. So I would just do that. Just loads more shots. Drown them in splinters. And make that a viable build option. Because at the moment, our only real build options, even though we've got a few, it's melee focused. Every single build option.
Right?
It's melee. It's melee heavy army. With a spattering of shooting units, but not really anything significant. The way, actually, interestingly, going back to what we said, the way the Corsairs play, like with the fact that they benefit from splinter racks, is actually really fun, and it feels when you've got them on the board, like you're just driving around a raider, and there's like 10 Corsairs in, and they're rapid firing their shuriken rifles at maximum range. Like, I'd love that, but with Drukhari models.
Completely. I think that would be awesome to see. I think Scourges are another shooting unit where it's just like just get Scourges right, man. Just like if they I reckon even if they just ignored heavy penalty, that'd have been fine. They'd have probably they'd have had game there, right? That's the thing they didn't do for them that they desperately needed to do.
Because it's like you look
at
them on
the models. Scourges are so cool.
The models are crazy, and you look at them on paper, you think I can have 4 heat lances for 100 points that can deep strike, and you think that's amazing. I can deep strike down. I can shoot 4 heat lances at you, and you're like, but you're only hitting on 4s. And
so you're just not going to do it.
So you're only going to hit twice, and then you're going to wound once, and you're going to do D6 plus 2 damage, and then you're going to die. So it's just like the Scourge, the Scourge they haven't really got right this one. The Shredder Scourge are quite good. I've been using
I do love Shredders.
The Shredder Scourge are pretty good. And I've been using 6-man just shard carbine guys just to come down and rod and then just be annoying. But for me, 10th, and from what I've seen of the rules so far, it seems to be more shooting focused from what I've seen so far, but I'm reserving judgment on that. But from what I've heard about like engagement ranges, the gun profiles I've seen, it seems like shooting is going to be more of a way to go. So I really hope that they give us that option in Drukhari, because otherwise we're going to struggle a bit. So
for sure. I think the one bit of the one rules conspiracy I'm currently living with, and I shouldn't get too excited about this, but obviously we've seen assault ramps. And something in me is going,
if we don't get that, it's
on a raider, move the raider, get out, stab some guys. I'd love that. That would be amazing. Let's have that. That would be really, really nice. So that's what I've got my fingers crossed for.
What edition was it we could do that? Sky, was it 5th we could do that?
I think we could do it in 3rd as well, right?
Yeah, I think we could. It was. I think it was 6th and 7th. They took away the ability to deploy after moving. And it completely changed the way you played Drukhari, massively changed them. And then they started giving it to certain other armies. And as a Drukhari player, you were like, why can that Impulsor move as fast as a Raider and deploy 5 intercessors out of it after it moved? And yet my Raider with the witches that are literally hanging off the side by a hook on a chain can't.
Exactly. Yeah. That's it. I think that's where, with what they're trying to do with vehicles, this hop out, hop in, the little tricks that different ones are going to give you, there's massive potential there. I think for Drukhari as a way of being mobile, but actually having stuff getting out, getting back in vehicles. If terrain does change, having that extra reach from doing that might help to compensate. If for an army you've got to hide further back, actually maybe, but then when you go, you can go further. That's something I'd really love to see as a way of dealing with the new design space around the terrain, and that would be really, really cool, but we'll see. We're still far too much. I don't know when we're getting our first reveals about what they're getting, but I'll be watching with my eyes peeled anyway. Yeah. All right, guys. thank you so much. This has been really, really fun. Enjoyed it massively. Keep taking prisoners. Keep feeding the Dark City, and hopefully we'll have you guys on again to chat in the future. But yeah, keep doing what you're doing. Big shout out to Realspace Raiders once again, and I'll be tuning in to hear your thoughts on 10th as that will get started as well.
Yeah,
thank you so much for everything.
All right.
Yeah, thanks very much,
guys. See you soon. Right. Bye-bye.
See you soon. Bye.